Rasters also have a backend attribute table, though it works differently from a vector attribute table. In a raster attribute table, each row represents a unique cell value, so if your elevation raster has values from 1M to 1000M, there would be up to 1000 rows. The value column stores the actual cell value. The count column tells you how many cells in the entire raster have that particular value. So, for example, if value equals 5, meaning 5 meters elevation, appears in 345 cells across the grid, the count for that row is 345. This is useful for statistics and reclassification. You can quickly see the distribution of values across your raster. Raster data comes in many file formats. The most common include .tiff or .tiff, GeoTIFF, the most widely used raster format in GIS. It can store georeferencing information internally. ASC, ASCII grid format, plain text, human-readable, IMG, ERDA's Imagine format, common in remote sensing, JPG, standard image format, can be used as raster but loses some precision. Like shapefiles, some raster formats come with companion files. For example, a GeoTIFF might come with a .tfw world file that contains georeferencing information. Both ArcGIS Pro and QGIS support a wide range of raster formats, and they can convert between them. There's a third type of data that's worth knowing about: tabular data. Tabular data is just a spreadsheet, rows and columns, no geometry. Think of a CSV file with a list of earthquake events, each with a latitude, longitude, magnitude, and date. On its own, tabular data isn't spatial, but it can be converted into spatial data in two ways. One joining: if your table has a shared unique identifier with a spatial layer, like a county FIPS code or a country name, you can join the table to the spatial layer. The spatial layer provides the geometry. The table provides the additional attributes. This is how census data, for example, gets mapped. You join census statistics to census boundary shapefiles. 2. Geocoding. If your table has coordinates, latitude/longitude, or addresses, GIS can plot those as points on the map. You can geocode a list of business addresses, for example, and instantly create a point layer showing their locations. Tabular data is a critical bridge between non-spatial information, like survey results or administrative records, and GIS. Common tabular file formats that GIS can work with: .csv, comma-separated values. The most universal format. Works with everything: XLSX, Excel format. Note that QGIS cannot natively read XLSX files. You need to convert to .csv first. DBF, the database format used inside shapefiles. It stores the attribute table and can also be opened in Excel. Pro tip: when in doubt, save your tabular data as a .csv. It's the most compatible format across all GIS software and operating systems. Let's talk about one more storage format: geodatabases. Geodatabases are ESRI's proprietary storage system for GIS data. Instead of having individual shapefiles floating around in a folder, a geodatabase is a container, a single folder structure that holds multiple geographic datasets of various types. Advantages: larger file size limits. Shapefiles are capped at 2 GB per layer. Faster processing when running geoprocessing tools. Better data management. Everything organized in one place can enforce topology rules and relationship classes. Disadvantages: can only be opened in ESRI software. You can't open a geodatabase in QGIS without conversion. This is a real limitation if you're sharing data with non-ESRI users. For large, complex projects in ArcGIS Pro, geodatabases are the recommended storage format. For cross-platform work, shapefiles or GeoTIFFs are safer. GIS doesn't live in isolation. It's part of a larger ecosystem of data tools, and there are many other file formats you'll encounter. GIS can import KML/KMZ, Google Earth files. You've probably seen .kml files if you've ever downloaded a map from Google Earth or Google Maps. DXF/DWG, CAD formats from AutoCAD. Common in engineering and architecture workflows. NetCDF, scientific data format used in climate modeling, oceanography, and atmospheric science. ERA5, CMIP6, and other climate datasets often come in NetCDF format. Loss: LiDAR point cloud data. Used for high-resolution terrain modeling GPS exchange format. Data exported from GPS units and apps. GeoJSON, a web-friendly JSON format for geographic data. Popular in web development and open data portals. GIS can export to Adobe Illustrator for custom cartographic design, KML for Google Earth, C80 formats TIFF and JPG for image outputs. GIS is not a closed system. It communicates with many other tools. This slide gives a broader picture of how GIS fits into larger analytical workflows. Satellite remote sensing feeds into GIS by providing processed imagery as rasters or vectors, classifications, enhancements, index maps. Raw imagery is also used as base maps. 3D modeling and photogrammetry feeds in orthophotos, DEMs, and 3D models, all of which become raster or vector inputs in GIS. Statistical analysis draws from GIS. You export attribute tables for regression modeling, prediction, and other quantitative analyses. Visual design, e.g., Adobe Illustrator, receives GIS outputs. You export maps from GIS and bring them into Illustrator for refined cartographic design. For your own work, whether it's hydrological modeling, hazard susceptibility mapping, land cover change, or climate analysis, GIS is almost certainly one node in a larger workflow. Understanding how it connects to your other tools is essential. The first characteristic is generalization. Generalization refers to the level of detail in a dataset. The most detailed data available is not always the most appropriate for every purpose. Look at this map. You can see two coastline boundaries, one in red and one in blue, representing the same coastline at different levels of detail. Red equals county-level data. Less detailed, smoother curves. Blue equals town-level data. More detailed, following every little inlet and peninsula. Both are correct representations of the coastline. They just operate at different scales. Here's why this matters. If you're making a national-scale map, the highly detailed town-level coastline is overkill. It will slow down your software, make your file sizes enormous, and won't even be visible at small scale. The generalized county-level boundary is more appropriate. Conversely, if you're doing a detailed local analysis, like calculating flood exposure for properties along the coast, you want the most detailed boundary available. Always match your data detail to your analysis scale. Related to generalization is abstraction, the process of reducing data from its complete state to what is necessary for a given use. This slide asks a great question. It shows an airport, Logan International in Boston, represented 4 different ways. Raw aerial photography. Maximum detail A simple airplane icon. Maximum abstraction A simplified polygon outline. Medium abstraction detailed runway geometry. Technical abstraction. Which representation is appropriate? Land use study of adjacent property. You'd want the polygon boundary. You need to know the extent of the airport, not the internal runway layout. Development map of the airport. You'd want the detailed runway geometry. You're interested in the internal structure. National map of airports. You'd want the airplane icon. At national scale, an airport is just a point. Spatial resolution refers to the level of detail captured in a dataset, and it's fundamentally tied to scale. This slide shows the same area, Cambridge, Massachusetts, at 2 different scales side by side. On the left, a local scale street map shows roads as polygons. You can see the actual width of each road, the median strips, the sidewalks. On the right, a national scale map shows roads as lines. There's no room to show road width at this zoom level. Roads become single pixel lines. Same data, different representation, different appropriate geometry. This is why, when you're searching for data, you need to think about the scale at which you're working. A dataset designed for national-level analysis will look terrible if you zoom into a neighborhood. A dataset designed for site-level analysis will be unnecessarily heavy if you try to use it for a regional analysis. Temporal resolution is another critical characteristic. It refers to when the data was collected. This slide shows 2 aerial images of the same neighborhood, Spring Valley, taken in 1977 and 2006. In 1977, the area is largely undeveloped. In 2006, it's been built out with housing, streets, and infrastructure. The landscape has fundamentally changed. This matters enormously for GIS analysis. If you're studying urbanization, you need data from multiple time periods. If you're studying current flood risk, you can't use a land use dataset from 1990. Too much has changed. Always check the date of your data. This is one of the first things you should look at when you download a dataset. Is it current enough for your purpose? For time-sensitive applications, like monitoring deforestation, glacier retreat, urban expansion, or crop growth, you often need multi-temporal data, a time series of images or datasets collected at regular intervals. Now, where do you actually find spatial data? This is one of the most practical questions in GIS, and it's worth spending some time on. Here are the key strategies. Look in general GIS data repositories. There are established portals specifically designed for sharing GIS data. We'll mention some on the next slide. Search the internet. Include terms like GIS data or shapefile, along with your topic and location. For example, Pakistan District Boundaries shapefile or Chitral Elevation DEM download. Country statistical agencies and open data portals. National statistics offices and government data portals often publish census data, administrative boundaries, and infrastructure data in GIS-compatible formats. Major cities increasingly have their own open data portals. Contact GIS departments, universities, or researchers if you're looking for specialized data in a particular region or domain. Reaching out directly to researchers who work in that area can be very effective. Many researchers share data upon request. Follow the sources in published papers. When you read a journal article that uses a dataset you need, look in the Data Availability section or the Methods section. Authors are increasingly required to cite their data sources. This slide has a note. Great slide to refer back to when starting a project. Seriously, bookmark this. Every GIS project starts with a data search, and having a systematic strategy saves enormous time. Before we move to map making, let's talk about metadata, one of the most underappreciated but critically important topics in GIS. Metadata is data about data. When you download a GIS dataset, it typically comes with a metadata file or page that describes the dataset itself. This is where you'll find who created the data, the originator, when it was created, publication date, what it represents, abstract and description, how it was created, methodology, what the columns in the attribute table mean, field definitions, what coordinate system it uses, spatial reference, what the limitations are, accuracy, resolution, constraints, access restrictions. Is it freely usable? Does it require attribution? Look at the metadata example on this slide. It shows a Massachusetts drainage basins dataset. The metadata tells you the originator is MassGIS, the publication date is 2003, it's a vector digital data layer in the geographic form, and it was created by the Massachusetts Office of Geographic and Environmental Information. Always read the metadata before using a dataset. It prevents mistakes. It ensures you understand what you're actually analyzing. And when you publish your work, you need to properly cite and attribute your data sources. Metadata gives you that information. Now we reach the final section of our content, making great maps, data visualization principles. This is where the analytical work we've been discussing gets translated into communication. Maps are not just outputs, they're arguments. They make claims about the world. And making good maps means making those claims clearly, accurately, and responsibly. 3 core principles to establish. 1. Cartography is the art and science of making maps. Notice both words, art and science. The science is the data, the projections, the classifications, the accuracy. The art is the design, the color, the typography, the layout. You need both. A technically accurate but visually chaotic map fails. A beautiful map based on bad data also fails. 2. Maps are always simplifications of reality. We've already discussed this in the context of generalization and abstraction. No map can capture everything. Every map is a model, and like all models, it simplifies. That simplification is not a flaw, it's what makes maps useful. But it also means every map involves choices, and those choices have consequences. 3. Maps are designed by people who have intentions, so we have to create them responsibly. This is perhaps the most important principle. Maps are not neutral. Every map reflects the choices of its maker. What to include, what to exclude, what to emphasize, what colors to use, what boundaries to draw. Maps have been used throughout history to claim territory, justify policies, and reinforce power. As GIS professionals, we have a responsibility to be honest, transparent, and thoughtful in how we make and use maps. This slide illustrates that responsibility beautifully. It shows 4 maps of the same area, all using real, accurate data, but each one designed to support a different stakeholder's argument about a proposed road connector. The County Chamber of Commerce uses property values to show the road is economically efficient. A community group uses racial demographics to show the road will divide an African American neighborhood. A historical preservation group shows that the road threatens historic buildings. A business association shows that the road will harm their commercial district. All 4 maps use real data. None of them are lying. But each one tells a completely different story because the choice of what data to show shapes the argument. The commentary on this slide is significant. In the past, only those in power had access to the software and data needed to make maps like this. GIS and open data have democratized that power. Now community groups, researchers, and advocates can make their own maps. That's transformative. But it also means we all need to think critically about every map we see and every map we make. Before you start mapping anything, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. Who wants the map? Experts? Detailed? Technical? Data-rich students? Clear, contextualized, pedagogical, the general public or community? Interactive, accessible, narrative-driven? 2. Where will it be seen? 8 by 11 paper? Static, small, focus on main points, minimal clutter 30x40 poster? Static, large, room for detail and annotation web map? Interactive, users navigate, layers can be toggled. 3. What is its purpose? Time series, showing how a variable changes over time change detection, highlighting what has changed between 2 points in time index mapping, combining multiple variables into a composite score, like a risk index, a vulnerability map, or a site suitability analysis. Each question deserves a well-thought-out answer before you touch the software. This is a discipline. Many beginners open GIS, load some data, and start clicking. That leads to mediocre maps. The best maps are designed on paper before they're built in software. Here's the map design process visualized as 3 stages. Stage 1. Assemble the data. Start with your raw ingredients, shapefiles, rasters, tables from multiple sources. At this stage, the map might look rough and unfinished. Stage 2. Choose data, analyses, and symbolization. Now you make design decisions. Which layers do you need? How should they be colored? What classification method? What analysis needs to run? The map starts to take shape. Stage 3. Insert finishing elements. Title, legend, north arrow, scale bar, and labels. These are the elements that turn a data display into a professional, communicable map. The example here shows this progression from a blank outline map of U.S. cities to sized proportional circles to a fully labeled and titled final map. Notice that the title, legend, and scale bar come last, not first. Don't agonize over your title when your data isn't right yet. Build the analysis first, then dress it up. This is a comprehensive reference table for vector symbolization, how you visually represent points, lines, and polygons. For each geometry type, point, line, area, there are multiple visual variables you can manipulate. Size, larger symbols for higher values, pattern/texture, different fill patterns for different categories, color lightness, lighter to darker shading for quantitative gradients, color saturation, pale to intense for emphasis, shape, different icons for different point categories, orientation, direction indicators, e.g., wind arrows, color hue, different colors for different qualitative categories. Each variable conveys a different kind of information. Size and lightness suggest quantity. Hue suggests category. Shape can suggest type or function. A great resource mentioned here, Color Brewer, colorbrewer2.org, a tool specifically designed to help you choose appropriate color schemes for maps, including options that are colorblind safe and print-friendly. For raster data, the symbolization options are stretches all cell values across a continuous color ramp. Best for continuous data like elevation or temperature. Discrete, groups cell values into a set number of color categories. Good for classified data. Classify, assigns one color per class of values. Used for categorical raster data, unique values, assigns a unique color to each distinct cell value. Used for classified land cover or land use rasters. Vector field, represents values as directional arrows. Used for wind direction, ocean currents, etc. The choice depends on your data type and your communication goal. One of the most important cartographic decisions is color scheme selection. The key rule: match the type of data to the type of color scheme. There are 3 major color scheme types. Qualitative, for categorical data, names, types, classes. Different hues, similar lightness. No implied ordering. Use when categories are unordered. Example: land cover types, political parties, ethnic groups. Sequential, for quantitative data that ranges from low to high. One hue, varying from light to dark. The visual implies order and magnitude. Example: population density, elevation, income. Diverging, for quantitative data that has a meaningful midpoint or zero. 2 hues diverging from a neutral center. Use when both directions from the middle are meaningful. Example: temperature anomaly, above/below average. Change detection, gain/loss. Vote margin. Using the wrong color scheme is one of the most common cartographic mistakes. Applying a qualitative rainbow color scheme to quantitative data implies no order when there actually is order. That's misleading. Applying a sequential scheme to categorical data implies ranking when there isn't any. Here's an example. This world map shows internet users per 100 people using a qualitative color scheme, random different hues. Does this make sense?
No.
Internet usage is a quantitative variable. It ranges from very low to very high. Using random, unordered colors makes it impossible to read the map meaningfully. There's no visual indication of which countries have more or fewer internet users. This is a cartographic mistake. The data is numerical. It needs a sequential or diverging scheme. Here's the same data using a sequential color scheme, shades of purple from light to dark. Now, it works. Light equals fewer internet users. Dark equals more internet users. At a glance, you can read the map. North America and Europe are darkest, most users. Sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Asia are lightest, fewest users. The sequential scheme matches the nature of the data. The map is now communicating clearly. And here's the same data with a diverging color scheme, green on one end, pink on the other, neutral in the middle. For internet users per 100 people. Does this make sense? Not really, unless you're specifically comparing above and below a meaningful threshold, like the global average. A diverging scheme implies there's a meaningful midpoint, which is the case for change data or anomaly data. For raw usage rates, sequential is more appropriate. This exercise, looking at the same data with 3 different color schemes, is really powerful. It shows how dramatically design choices affect communication. Let's talk specifically about choropleth maps, one of the most commonly used map types. A choropleth map uses different shading or coloring to represent the value of a variable within defined geographic areas, like counties, states, or countries. The example here shows school spending per student by school district across the United States, using a diverging scheme centered on the national average. Districts spending more are teal, districts spending less are orange-red. Choropleth maps are everywhere: election results, COVID case rates, unemployment rates, census data. They're intuitive and effective when done well. But there are important pitfalls, and the most important one is the classification method. 2 key decisions in making a choropleth map. 1. Number of classes. How many categories do you divide your data into? More classes equals more visual variation, but also more complexity. Generally, 5 to 7 classes is considered optimal. Too few and you lose nuance. Too many, and the map becomes unreadable. 2. Classification method. How do you define the boundaries between classes? This is a critical decision that dramatically affects what the map looks like and what story it tells. The major methods are equal interval, quantile, natural breaks, and defined/manual. Let's define each method. Equal interval. divides the data range into equal-sized chunks. If your data ranges from 0 to 100 with 5 classes, each class is 20 units wide, 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 to 100. Simple and transparent, but can create lopsided class distributions if the data is skewed. Quantile, equal count, divides the data so each class has the same number of features. If you have 100 counties and 5 classes, each class has 20 counties. Every shade appears the same number of times on the map. This maximizes visual variation, but can group very different values into the same class. Natural breaks, GIS, uses statistical optimization to find the boundaries that minimize within-class variance and maximize between-class variance. In other words, it tries to find the natural clusters in your data, often the best choice for exploratory analysis. Manual/defined intervals. You set the class boundaries yourself. Useful when you have domain knowledge, like 25% is the meaningful threshold for a particular variable, or when you need consistency across multiple maps. Each method has legitimate uses. The key is understanding what your data looks like and choosing the method that best represents the patterns you're trying to communicate. This slide shows the same dataset, 2020 U.S. county-level percentage of population over 65, mapped 3 ways using natural breaks, quantile, and equal interval classification. Look at how dramatically different the maps look. Natural breaks shows strong clustering. High elderly counties stand out clearly, quantile, more evenly distributed shading. Every class appears frequently, equal interval, because most counties cluster in the lower range. The top classes are very rare, making much of the map appear in lighter shades. Same data. 3 very different visual stories. None of them are wrong, but they emphasize different aspects of the distribution. This is a powerful reminder. The classification method is a design decision that carries responsibility. If you're presenting this data to a policy audience, the method you choose could influence what they prioritize. We're almost done. The final topic is map layout design, composing the full map page. Key principles. Map layout is about developing a balanced arrangement. Think of the map page as a canvas. Every element, the main map, the title, the legend, the scale bar, the north arrow, the inset map, the source credits, needs to be placed thoughtfully. The goal is to support your design questions. Refer back to our 3 key questions. Who wants the map? Where will it be seen? What is its purpose? The layout should serve those answers. The example here shows a beautifully composed map of vegetation in the Democratic Republic of Congo, with a title, a legend, an inset location map, a scale bar, and source credits. Everything has its place. Here are specific layout tips. Inset/locator maps. Small context maps, showing where your study area is in a larger geographic context. Place these in corners, often upper left for the regional context, lower right for a zoom-in. Main map, usually centered and largest. This is what the reader focuses on. Legend. Tuck it into or near the main map so readers can easily compare the symbols to the map while they're looking at it. Don't put the legend far away from the map itself. Scale bars and north arrows. Include them, but keep them small. They're reference tools, not focal points. Don't let them compete with the main map. Source credits. Always run along the bottom. Credit your data sources, your software, your imagery. The note on this slide. Complete the take-home exercise to learn more. The take-home exercise walks you through building a complete map layout from scratch. The exercise uses unemployment and transportation data to simulate a real-world decision. Where should a mixed-use facility be built? You'll practice. Navigate the software interface, getting comfortable with panels, toolbars, and the map viewfind and add data, including base maps, loading local data files, and connecting to online base maps access, and explore attribute information, opening attribute tables, querying data-symbolized data layers, vector and raster. Applying appropriate symbology to different data types, select data by attributes and spatial location, filtering features based on conditions, design a simple map for export, creating a print layout with title, legend, scale bar, and north arrow. This exercise will take approximately 1 to 2 hours. By the end, You'll have produced a complete GIS map, and you'll have practiced the core workflow that underlies almost every GIS project.